Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Executive Director Roger Durling.
Good evening, everybody. A big thank you to the Manitou Fund and the Board of Directors of the festival for making everything possible for us. And also to Variety, who are an incredible partner for the past 9 years with the festival. What I love about this evening is that we're celebrating not only the amazing artists, but we're also celebrating community, partnership, as reflected in our working together with Variety to put this evening together, and the intrinsic collaborative nature of cinema. There are so many artists that make films. It's not all about directors and the big movie stars that dazzle in front of us. Tonight is all about these behind-the-scenes magicians that make movies possible and make it so possible. So here's to the artisans, and I'm so glad to introduce your host for this evening. Jazz Tangay is the Senior Artisans Editor for Variety. Please welcome Jazz.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Roger. Thank you to the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. This is our 9th year, and what a joy it is to be here with you all at the Arlington Theater. We started off at the Libero Theater, so, you know, look how much we've grown. As Roger said, this festival is about spotlighting the craftspeople who make the magic happen. So tonight, we are gonna hear from the creators behind Top Gun Maverick, Avatar, The Way of Water, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Babylon, The Whale, All Quiet on the Western Front, RRR, and Elvis, and we're gonna hear about their process and their craft. You are really in for a treat, and if you're new to this, the format of the evening is we play some clips, and then we have a one-to-one for about 5 minutes, and then we bring everybody out for a panel conversation, and then we have the awards presentation. So thank you so much for coming out tonight. Enjoy, and let us celebrate the artisans. So our first clip is from a movie that is an internet sensation. It's a cult sensation. People have been dancing in the aisles for it, and it is called RRR. I was gonna say, if you wanted to dance in the aisle during that, you were more than welcome to. So, from RRR, we have composer M.M. Kiravani. Take a seat right there. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you too, and good evening, everyone. So excited.
Congratulations on the incredible success of Naatu Naatu.
Thank you very much.
RRR. Talk about, what was the creative brief for writing Naatu Naatu? You've worked with SS for over 20 years now, right? So what did he say to you?
Yeah, I've been working with this director, Rajamouli, for the past 20 years, for 12 movies. This happens to be 12th movie, RRR. And his work is ever challenging, and this particular movie is even more challenging because we have two superheroes, two big giants like who have their own fan following of their own. And I have to balance between those two fan followings so that nobody is offended or nobody wants to feel any less. So that's a big task. So apart from giving music, this has been my big task.
Yeah. So when you are writing Naatu Naatu, how do you crack that song? Like the music, what was the lyric? Because it has to tell a story.
Yeah,
right?
Naatu Naatu is not just a song. It has played the role of a bridge between two scenes. So I call it a scene. It's not a song actually. So this song contains lots of emotions and challenging portions, stamina and dance to showcase. So because it's against some kind of racism happening there. So I need to resort to an energetic time signature that is we call 6/8. That is that's a very energetic beat. So I resorted to the beat, and my lyricist, Mr. Chandra Bose, provided wonderful lines which depict of ethnicity and all the things we enjoyed and had fun as children and as grown-up people in the motherland, and which is ethnic. So, and I had two singers who has to sing the song with full energy, with high pitch and clarity. And of course, the director choreographed the song along with Prem Rachit, and did wonderful job in Ukraine. And particular dance step went viral on TikTok and other platforms and all. So I call it teamwork. I'm very happy. I'm representing to be taking this award on behalf of my team, entire team.
And what an incredible team it is. How long did it take to write Natu Natu?
How long?
Yeah.
Yeah, it took actually 1.5 years, but not the entire time. So on and off, the director used to call us and just open the file again and sit on the song. And the man hours, approximately 2 months. I mean, the producing the song, the programming, voice, dubbing, everything. For me, it took 2 months. And for the director, he took approximately 10 days to shoot the song.
Why did it take 10 days? I mean, talk about, like, were you on set and when that was being filmed? And
Pardon me?
were you on set when it was being filmed? It took 10 days, right? To shoot the song.
I didn't get you.
It took 10 days to shoot the song?
10 days, yeah, approximately. Yeah.
Tell us the story.
It connects the story. Yeah.
No, the choreography and the dance moves and...
They shot the song in Ukraine, and entire team went there. I couldn't go because I was working on a different project. So they had filmed a movie, many scenes there, and the song also one of the scenes. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, you mentioned, the viral TikTok, the song going viral. I mean, I think it spawned something like 20 million views before the film had even been released. The song has won a Golden Globe and a Critics' Choice Awards, and you are now nominated for an Oscar. What does this mean for you? Talk about the impact.
It means the world for me because there is a lot more to explore in India, because Indian music has got 72 scales to be explored, out of which hardly 10 to 15 scales are exploited by the world. But there is still a lot more in Indian classical music, and it's a very good opportunity for us to get more and more exposure, and for the entire world to get benefited by the rich heritage music of India. Yeah, this is good for us and good for the world.
And, if you follow the Oscar race, you are currently, Natu Natu is predicted to win over Lady Gaga, over Rihanna, big music superstars. What does that mean for you?
I hear in the Oscar race, I feel like I am enjoying every moment of it with all the wonderful events happening. So be it Rihanna or be it Lady Gaga, we were great fans of their work. So I feel like becoming one of their family members. I don't feel like contending here, but I'm feeling like becoming a part of their circle. So that itself is a great feeling.
Yeah. I love that. And as I said, people have been up dancing in the aisles at the TCL Theater in Hollywood. Do you have a favorite fan moment or a favorite viral moment that has really stuck with you?
So, I had a fan moment, and I don't call it a fan moment exactly, but I had a wonderful moment that I missed actually. So at Golden Globes, I was sitting and I was posing for some iPhone. Somebody, my artist NTR, asked me to pose for his camera. So I was completely concentrating on that. And I couldn't notice Rihanna just passing from behind and saying congratulations. So that was, what is it? How did I miss that? And that was captured in a video. So, should I feel happy or should I feel, oh my God, how did I miss this? So it's a mixed feeling. But anyway, that was recorded because that was recorded. And I'm very grateful for the universe for such wonderful moments.
Incredible. Congratulations on being...
I had been the rude boy here.
I love it. Congratulations on being the recipient of the Variety Artisans Award Composer. We'll bring you back at the end of the conversation for the panel moment. And now I'm going to pull up a clip from All Quiet on the Western Front. Ooh, oh my gosh. From All Quiet on the Western Front, please welcome sound designer Marcus Stemler. Have a seat. Oh
Good evening.
my gosh. Good evening. Oh my, All Quiet on the Western Front is phenomenal, whether you experience it at home on TV or in the cinema. And that sound design is truly, a work of art. I mean, talk about how did you find the sounds of World War I in 2023? Or 2020 when you were doing the film?
Yeah. Well, actually, we tried to find the original sounds from World War I, but we couldn't. So we did some research and, tried to find sonic references from the time, but it turned out that, sound recording technology back then was still in its infancy and you just don't find recordings. So what we came across instead were actually letters from soldiers that they had written to their loved ones back home, where they described what they heard. And that became an inspiration for us how to treat the sounds and what to create actually, because in these letters they describe what impact the sounds had on them. They were traumatized by the constant, relentless firing and also by rotting bodies on the battlefield, stuff like that. So, yeah, that was a good inspiration for our work then.
Like, talk about that clip that we just saw. There's a lot going on. You've got, the bombing in the background. You've got the soldiers, and they're having that conversation, and it's a really emotional moment. But how did you balance in, all that sound that we're hearing, as well as?
So Edward, the director, he's really brief in his communication, kind of. So he would just say, "Okay, guys, think of Das Boot, the movie." Because it's very claustrophobic when they end up in this bunker. And I think, in general, the movie is very much about the transformation of from these soldiers being very enthusiastic about war, and then when they finally get to see the true face of war, they end up in shock and terror. And I think this is very much condensed in that scene, because right before the clip, they are still on the watch, and they're looking forward to shoot their first French soldiers. And then they end up in the bunker in fear for their life. And this is very much where, their idea of doing glorious things at the battlefront collapses just like the bunker. So the bunker had to be intense, very intense and threatening to them. as it was. And I don't know, we did all sorts of things. We, for instance, for that scene, we took contact microphones and dragged them through earth, and that would give us a very like earth rumbly sound, and yeah, kind of that stuff to make it really threatening, just and address the emotional state that they were in.
Yeah. I want more details on the sound. Like, what are the, you know, things did you use, such as like for the belt buckles or like the boots when it's running through snow, or like the mud and. Give us details.
The mud is, yeah, it's really muddy business on this film. We had a lot of mud recordings. It started on the set, obviously. The production sound mixer, he recorded lots of wild tracks of, you know, soldiers walking through mud, running through mud, falling into mud. And then later on in sound post-production, in the Foley department, actually, they built up a huge mud pit, and every time I came to their studio, it was like, it looked like on set, basically. But then, yeah, the challenge is that you need to, because mud kind of sounds the same when you do it with actual mud. So they came up with other tools to create similar sounds like mud. They had this very interesting block of medical silicon, the stuff that you use for implants and stuff. And then when you squeeze that, even though it's not like wet or anything, it really sounds like mud. So, but these are, yeah, accidental revelations in the Foley studio.
See, this is why I like asking about secrets and like the process. I mean, can you tell us one more? I mean, I'm sure they want to hear us.
No, I shouldn't get into the... Well, let me think. So for there's the scene with where the tank approaches, and we always thought we really need a sound of metal that cuts through. So I talked to the Foley guys and said, like, can you create a groaning metal sound for us that we can then use for the tanks? And they ended up using a big, long metal pipe from the air condition, and then to create a resonating sound, they used little wooden toy cars of that size with little wooden wheels. And if you just have the toy cars, they would just squeak. So, ew, ew. But then if you put them on the metal pipe, it would suddenly become this very large groaning metal sound. But when you look at it, how they do it, and then you think, okay, these are the toy cars, and they're going to become the tanks. Sometimes it's better if you don't see how they do it, you know.
Marcus, thank you for that insight into
you
All
so much.
Quiet on the Western Front. Congratulations on being the recipient of Variety's Artisans Award for the sound design. If you stay here, I'm going to stay here for a second, and then I'm going to bring up the clip from Everything Everywhere All at Once. Oh my gosh. That was such a beautiful moment from Everything Everywhere All at Once. So, from the film, please welcome composer Ryan Locke of Sun Locks. Oh, what a film.
That part's really emotional.
I know, I think, I was like, oh my gosh, how many people are we going to make cry because of that?
Oh, man.
Congratulations on the film's success.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wish I had a tissue, because, like, he's tearing
Well, it's like I
up.
forgot that we were gonna show that clip because it's like, oh, it's so good and like just.
Okay, deep breath.
Yeah, deep breath.
Do you need some water?
No, I'm good. I'm just chill.
All right. What was your reaction when you got the script for this film?
So Daniel's, the directors hit us up in September of 2019. They didn't even have the film fully cast yet. And the movie that would have happened if the script went right to the into the through the cameras and into the onto the screen would be like a 4-hour movie. So as bananas as the movie is, imagine it like 80% longer and even crazier, and featuring subplots starring Spaghetti Baby Noodle Boy and his companions. When they sent the script, so I scored this film with my band, Ian Chang and Rafiq Bhatia. We did this as a team. Those guys were slightly smarter than me, so when we got the script, they loved it. They like laughed their ass off, couldn't put it down. I couldn't get through it. I was like, this has to be broken. Like, this PDF is corrupt or something. This doesn't make any sense. That is honestly, I'm not exaggerating. I swear I thought it was broken. I mean, no one's gonna make that movie, so why would they make that script, you know?
By the way, I don't know if you can see, but like his pin is the googly eye. If you've seen the movie, you know what we're talking about. Okay, but I want to ask you, okay, there's so many different multiverses. What was the first cue that you wrote? And there's like over 40 cues in this movie, right?
There's actually over 100.
Never mind, 100.
Yeah, so on the soundtrack, there's 49 tracks,
Yeah.
but like, as far as cues, individual moments of music that each one had to do a specific thing or a specific 400 things, there were over 100. The first task that we were given was kind of, something that made us immediately think, all right, maybe these guys didn't hire the right people. Like, this is maybe, should we really be doing this? We were tasked with writing a courtship song that accompanies a kind of ceremony for two people who are in love who also have hot dogs for fingers. So that was task number one. Write that song. Like, you've heard our music, right? It's like, we're a very self-serious band. I don't know that we're the right ones for this. I'm glad I was really wrong and they were really right.
I mean, talking about your music, like, how different was this from like writing a studio album, and then you're also collaborating with the filmmakers and sending them cues back and forth and making sure that you're all on the same page?
Scoring is a unique challenge in that you do have to lay down your own primary directives and really serve the story, serve the director's dreams and visions for whatever it is they want to bring about. In this case, that was truly an easy task. And what I mean by it wasn't easy because it was a small amount of work, it was an enormous amount of work. But because the directors had such a clear vision, they had such a great way of articulating what exactly the music needed to do. And in the swarm and in the mess and the chaos and the confusion and all of the emotions, they always knew how to communicate to us exactly what it was that we needed to feel. And that was that was so incredible, because then it was just going about the business of making that feeling, you know? And that's just like, that's not work, you know? It's something else.
Well, yes, please. A scene where you really feel, or one of the cues where you feel really like, oh my gosh, is the In Another Life cue. Like, talk about writing that and that emotional. I'm not here to make you cry, Ryan.
No. There's a moment in the film. The cue is called In Another Life, and it happens just before that moment, where. Yeah, wow. Anyway, I'm not going to go too deeply into it, because clearly I can't. But that was actually one of the trickiest cues for us. And my bandmate Rafik Bhatia, he spearheaded that cue. And one of the reasons why it was really difficult was no pressure, but Dan Kwan told us that he'd never cried in the process of making anything he's ever done, except when he was working on this scene. You know, I was like, no pressure, right? There was something about this particular scene where he felt more like he just didn't want to let it go. He wanted to like really tend it all the way across the finish line. And I think once I got into the theater with human beings after working on this thing for like a year and a half, and at the premiere and sensing what it was like and how the lights pouring off of the screen and into the hearts and minds of human beings gathered together was happening, I got it. I really got it for the first time, what it was and why Kwan wanted to tend it across the finish line with such care and finesse. But it was a tricky one. Normally composers aren't part of the mixing process, the film mix. We had the privilege of seeing this thing through all the way to the end, speaking of the finish line. So we were present at the mix, which took 2 weeks. There's a lot going on in this movie. And pretty much the whole time we were working, still scoring it, making little adjustments. Because, you know, the whole time we weren't together, you know, this was pandemic vibes. So like the second time that I was ever in the physical presence of the Daniels was at the film mix after working together for over a year on this thing. The first time was in my studio in maybe November or December of 2019, and it was awesome. Oh man, we live 8 minutes down the road, we're gonna be together all the time, this is gonna be so great. And then literally didn't see them until a year and a half, 2 years later, you know, in person. So we were finally all in the room together, watching this thing coming alive, you know, sonically and everything. But it's just like we couldn't help but like, but it could be a little better, you know. So we were there, and we were just like run to the next room and make a little change, and then this one was the last one. This one was the last one in Another Life, and we pressed print. We slid it across. They pressed print on the reel, and we hopped in a cab, and that was it. And then we didn't see each other again until the premiere 9 months later.
Wow, amazing.
It's crazy.
All right, Ryan, stay here. Congratulations, and we're going to bring up the next clip from Elvis. Okay, woo, what a film. Okay, please welcome 4-time Oscar winner, Catherine Martin. She is nominated this year as a costume designer, production designer, and a producer.
Hi, Catherine.
Hello, warning you now, I have no mic technique, as my husband would say. No mic technique. He's always side coaching me whenever I have a mic, so I'm having a little bit of post-traumatic stress syndrome.
By the way, I just want to say thank you to all the artisans here tonight because they have flown in Catherine's case, from Australia, right?
Yes, last night.
Around the world to be here tonight. Some have come straight from LA from the luncheon earlier, so we're really grateful that you're all here. Catherine, congratulations on the incredible work on Elvis.
Thank you so much, Jazz.
What a lot of people don't know about the film is that the costumes and the production design was all done in Australia.
Yes, every last thing.
The film spans decades from, young Elvis to the 70s. Where do you even begin with starting,
Well, you
building
start
the
with Baz and his vision for an incredible movie. He's been talking about Elvis for 30 years, and I kind of didn't get it. That's me usually. I didn't get Gatsby either. Because I'd read it at school and I thought, I don't know about this book. And then he said, listen, you've got to stop pontificating. Your opinion as a 15-year-old is meaningless. Go upstairs and read the book straight away. It's good that I actually listened to him because then I was the convert. I loved the book when I reread it as a much older person. But it starts with his vision. He will come, he'll tell you the story with sound effects and a lot of sound effects, voices. He really liked playing Priscilla. And he'll also bring tear sheets and reference images and little scribbles he's drawn as kind of starting points. And then that's kind of the foundation of the collaborative journey. And it always is about research. It's incredibly intensive. He spent on and off over 18 months at Graceland. Karen Murphy and I, my co-production designer and my long-time design associate, Chris Tangy, went on a number of reconnoiters to Graceland. We did a big drive through the south to really kind of imbibe the feeling because, as I think you might imagine, we were incredibly nervous being Australians trying to recreate the South in Australia. We were like, the recipe for disaster. So we were really focused on trying to understand more than just the historical context, but also the topography of the landscape, the way that the trees felt, the way that driving from one tour spot to another might have felt for Elvis. So, yes, it starts with an exploration of, certainly in this movie and most of our movies, in historical fact, so that you are well versed and everything is at your fingertips when it starts to be about making selections that help tell a story.
You talked about the research. What struck you about Elvis's style and the evolution of that?
I mean, Elvis was just a natural stylist. I mean, he was extraordinary because, in my view, this is completely me. I'm not an Elvis scholar, so I'll probably be, pilloried, cancelled on the internet for saying this. But to me, there are two things that Elvis was confident about. He suffered from stage fright all his life. He, was a tormented artist to a large degree. But two things, I think, when he was singing and when he was in the middle of the music, he was completely one with it and totally confident. And the other thing is about creating his look, both on and off stage. And he just had a kind of innate talent and ability to express the character that he wanted to be for his audience through clothes. And it is extraordinary when you think, you know, he came from very humble beginnings, the first person in his family to graduate high school. So it's not like he was drawing on this enormous cultural lexicon of clothing, and he single-handedly created a style that is iconic and recognised all over the world.
And the 1968 special, that leather suit, which is, everybody knows it, we saw it in the clip. Talk about recreating that and the leather textures that you had to, the right leather, I guess.
So the original designer of the 68 special clothes was a man called Bill Ballou, who was the costume designer at NBC in that period. And he designed that signature kind of Napoleonic collar, and went on also to design Elvis's jumpsuits later in the 70s. For us, the black leather suit was sort of a watershed moment because we had access to the real leather suit. We measured every belt loop, every collar stand, every little inch of the suit was measured. You know, I'd actually seen it in person. We'd been able to, from all of these measurements, you know, actually make a replica of the suit as it is historically. And we realised, I think the three of us, Austin, Baz and I, in that moment, that when you just slavishly reproduce things, they ended up feeling a bit like Halloween costumes. And that it was not doing Elvis justice or Austin's interpretation of Elvis. And so Baz came up with a really good construct, I think. He said, we're Bill Ballou, Elvis is our Austin, and we're going to make the black leather suit exactly as it was in the past, but for Austin. And so it's really subtle changes, but they make all the difference. You know, Elvis had a different height of neck than Austin. You know, everybody's butt is slightly different, so you move the pockets just marginally. And somehow, from a blurry kind of almost vulgar picture, we were able to collectively bring that suit into focus with very minor changes, but I think it made all the difference. And then, of course, there's the secret weapon, and that is Austin Butler. So in Strictly Ballroom, I think Fran, who's the ugly duckling, says, you know, when they're saying you're going to be great, you look great, go out, wow them, and they're remembering how her mother was glamorous, and she says yes, you know, or they say in the movie, you know, my mother could wear a potato sack and still light up the stage, and that also is what Austin does. I always feel very self-conscious when people want to put film costumes into an exhibition, because to me they always look like kind of discarded carcasses or kind of like cicada shells on the side of the road, because the thing that's important about a costume is the alchemy between the actor and the clothes. And without the actor, it's just a leather pants and a kind of slightly dodgy blouson with weird pieces of elastic on the inside to, you know, tie it to the top, to the bottom. But yes, the actor is the key to bringing clothes alive. That's why the whole of the fashion industry chases actors to embody the feeling of the clothes, because they do such a good job of bringing those things to life through character.
I want you to share quickly the story about how you discovered how Elvis did his buttons and how that helped you with designing the shoulders and the jackets.
So Elvis in the mid-50s wore a lot of structured 50s suiting, quite boxy in shape with big shoulders. And we were working on a few jackets that kind of fell into that category, particularly Rustwood, which is such an important part, turning point in the film. And it's just a black suit. And we just couldn't crack it, because Baz kept talking about how the clothes had to work with Elvis's movement, his shocking sexuality needed to be really connected with the clothes, and you're kind of thinking, a black suit, shocking sexuality, I'm not sure how we're going to do this. This is a tall mountain to climb. And I just couldn't make the jacket work, and we made, you know, I kept thinking, is it that there's too much structure inside it? Are the shoulder pads too big? Is it not close enough to the body? Do we need to make it less boxy? Do we need to make it more boxy? What are we doing wrong? And I remember in a fitting where poor Austin had to try on like 300 black jackets. We just could not get it to work. And finally we were looking at the video of Elvis at Rustwood, and we also looked at him on the Steve Allen Show and in a number of other television appearances, and we realised the key was on these two button jackets. They were jackets with two buttons. He never did the top button up, ever. And the minute we left that top button up, it gave room in the shoulders, so Elvis could actually roll his shoulders, and you had a sense of his chest, and the jacket became sexy. And it was just, you just kind of so crazy that we'd watched all this stuff for years and not noticed it. And in that moment, thank God we noticed.
You know, everybody's going to go home and watch those videos and be like, right. Catherine, so thank you so much. Congratulations.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I'll see you for the panel conversation. Stay here for a second, and we are going to bring up a clip from Babylon. That is a 30-minute sequence, by the way. Please welcome, from Babylon, production designer Florencia Martin. Florencia and I matched today. Yes. We were messaging. I was like, are you wearing cream? She goes, yes. And I was like, me too. Congratulations on everything, Babylon. Florencia is no stranger to designing LA sets, right? You've done Licorice Pizza, you did Blonde and Babylon and more. Let's start with this clip. This is, as I said, it's a 30-minute clip. Yeah. I mean, where do you even begin with that? And working with Damien on what he said.
Oh my goodness. Well, Damien had such a specific vision for this film. You know, he had it first all in his head, and then in the script that he wrote, and then the 400-page Bible of images and storyboards that he did of the whole film. And so when we first sat down together, he just wanted to really create something that was explosive and visceral and really immerse the audience into the film and not play it safe. You know, sometimes you look at images from the period and they're staged, much like photos today of an interior design home. He's like, no, I want it to feel real and authentic. So what we did was for the party, we started to look for locations, and much like this theater, we went into the Ace Theater in downtown Los Angeles that was built in the 1920s and stepped into the foyer, and it was this incredible, intricate, detailed space with 3 levels like Damien had envisioned, and this amazing opportunity to dive the camera into the party and really fill the space with people. And our challenge was then to create this historic theater into a residential ballroom. And so we started to look at all our methods to bring in wood flooring and cover all these entrances with, you know, beautiful doors, and then create a party that evolves. So that was another wonderful experience of designing that sequence. Was we were working with Justin Hurwitz's score, and that was a really special experience overall in the film, to have the music early in prep and say, you know, listen and walk the space with Damien and Linus various times early in prep and as we were building the set, and study the way that camera movement was going to be, and it was all timed, to also Mandy Moore, our choreographer, and working with her in the rehearsal studio for 3 months ahead of time. And so once we got into the space, we were well rehearsed, and it was amazing to fill that theater with, I think, 500, 600 extras, and everything in camera. And as filmmakers, we couldn't be in the space because the camera was moving 360 throughout. So we were all watching in the balconies, overlooking at all these extras, jumping up and down between scenes too. We had the music playing full volume. And then they would hit rolling, and it was just, you were just there in that party. And then as the night evolves, you have Ladyface dance sequence, you have the madness when the elephant comes in, and all the balloons drop, and then at the end, the final disarray of the entire party. So there was a lot of different moments that went into that sequence.
It is one of the best opening sequences in film this year. Talk about, recreating, because the film is set at the, silent era Hollywood as it turns into talkies. So, LA is far from a barren landscape. So how did you find the location to do that and also build a film studio, Kinoscope, that's fictional?
I mean, it was a huge challenge when you shoot in Los Angeles. We couldn't really travel outside what we call the 30-mile zone, or there's the 60-mile zone, and it does not look like early 1920s. So we were lucky. Right on the other side of San Fernando Valley, there's a stretch of farmland. It's very historical, Piru, Fillmore, and Santa Paula. And that's where we found our location for the silent film studio. And we actually were looking at a lot of horse barns and ranches, and it didn't really fit the scope to what Damien wanted. You look at the photos of Warner Brothers and Universal when they were getting built in Burbank and Toluca Lake, and it was just the hills and, the landscaping. So we were really trying to, honor the research, and we found this ranch and decided that this was the best space that we could really take over, and mapped out, what this studio was by studying a lot of archival photos from Paramount Archival, of what it was like to be on a film studio. And what Damien wanted to evoke was really what the hardships that it was to build this, and so that was what we were trying to do, is create the studio and also create the backstory that it did come from farmland and orange groves. So we built a big barn, and we had our windmill, and then the layering of the film sets and the behind-the-scenes production. So just that was specifically for early Kinoscope, but in general, just looking for the locations. We had to scout a lot, and we had to really go through a lot of historical archives. The Department of Water and Power was an incredible resource, and really look at homes that hadn't been heavily renovated, and also homes that allowed us to have a really big landscape out into these barren exteriors that we wanted to tie the audience back to always and remind them. We're in early Los Angeles, we're not in the Hollywood Hills. So, we were very fortunate to find locations for the Wallack's exterior outside of Lancaster. That was this big rock castle that was built in the 1920s, and it allowed the camera to come, out from the party and stitch it together to that location and come out into the barren desert. And then also for Jack Conrad's house, that was in Simi Valley. And, we chose that because it was just surrounded by the Santa Susana Mountains, and you really could feel that early, the early pioneers and these dreams that they were building.
I love when Margot Robbie first enters the Kino studios, and you see all the different sets. Talk about the conversations that you had with Damien about the different types of movies that you were going to have going on in the background on those different sets.
Damien loves film, and he's a film historian, and so in that sequence where he wanted to really create these jewel boxes, we call them, because we had the desert landscape, and then we had all these worlds that they were creating. So there's the jungle set and the cook, and this pink backdrop that we had hand painted of this Asian backdrop, and then going into this Wild West, bar that is Nellie's film set. So what we wanted it was to feel rough and lived in, and they weren't shooting with sound, so there's amazing anecdotes of people stealing actors from one set to another and running around and taking down a set and building a new one. So we wanted that kinetic energy. We wanted it to feel like it'd been there for a long time, but it was also timed to music and very specific camera movements. So, we started by marking and Damien shooting with his phone, all of the tempos and building an animatic and building a shot list from there. And then really looking at the size of the sets. We were shooting anamorphic, and in the silent era, the sets were really high, though in order to capture the 4:3 that they were shooting. But for us, we wanted to show the set and also the construct of the set and the world around them. So we really paid a lot of detail, first in a white model and then a digital model, and then shooting it with Damien as the sets evolved. We would come back and location and really map out the sequence, make sure that the timing was correct, and also that we were seeing what we wanted to get in the frame. So it was a lot of layers.
How many sets did you have to build for this film?
I think we had over 120 individual sets. And we had about 73 days of shooting. So we had multiple sets on days, and I have to, for my team and also the film crew, like how much we moved, from one, we'd be in Pomona, then Pasadena, then, and very different themes and tones in each set. So there was a lot, and then we got to build both a silent film studio and then a sound, so.
Incredible. Florencia, congratulations.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Stay put. We'll see you at the end for the panel conversation. And now I'm going to bring up a clip from Top Gun Maverick. Oh boy. Okay, from Top Gun Maverick, we have cinematographer Claudia Miranda. Oh my gosh, that cinematography is incredible, Claudio. Fun fact, I was reading up. Did you really get like a pilot's license for this film?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I wanted to it was a bucket list. I'm only on a putt-putt plane. It's not really powerful, and I flew into this place, Santa Barbara, and I think it's the most complicated airport I ever tried to deal with. It was totally frightening. And after I did my bucket list, I barely passed my test. It was barely anything. I think I failed it one time because I did like a concentrated, crash course, basically, and I did it in 2 weeks. And I have my pilot's license, I have it, So.
There you go.
An achievement.
So you put, the thing with Top Gun Maverick, and it's Tom Cruise. He likes doing his own stunts.
Yeah.
So this isn't green screen. That meant you had to get cameras in those planes. Like, talk about that challenge or how you actually made it work so you could get the shots that you needed.
Well, I like getting on a movie early on. I found that Joe got this movie, and a little bit of a side story to this as well that kind of has a little bit deep meaning for me as well, as I was a gaffer for Tony Scott, the original, and I gaffed 3 movies with him. And so there was a lot for me kind of emotionally to do this movie and make sure I did this right for him. So there was a huge emotional for me kind of connect. So when I found out that when I had this movie, I just knew that I needed to get my homework kind of on really early. So I knew there would be conversations with the Navy, and they work different than we work, interestingly enough. So I knew I'd need a lot of lead time to get things through red tape, and I was trying to get there. When I heard it was a maybe, I tried to get to the Navy and get conversations about what planes we can use. I spent a lot of time looking at a bunch of F-18s, and I found this really old version of an F-18 that had this very flat spot. And I said, wow, I could probably get a camera on there. And they told me, you'll never get more than 2 cameras. And I said, huh, you know. And I got 6, so. And yeah, those were like, it's interesting how they work. They just work, it's just very interesting how they work. And it's different than how I work, but that's okay. You know, I work in a, you know, I get excited about certain things, and you know, so I'm going through the plane, I'm saying, what's that for? And I said, you know, that's a video camera. I said, I have that, you could take that out. So I started ripping apart their planes. And the thing is that they really loved, a lot of the people that were there were because of the original Top Gun. And so, and eventually they were all excited to help out as much as they can. And I found that extremely helpful. I was able to do things you just couldn't even imagine, you know. I turned an aircraft carrier for an over, and I would do another over, and they'd spin the aircraft carrier around again. I mean, I was access to like crazy stuff that you just never imagine. You know, just all sorts of crazy things. I mean, I had a bunkmate. You know, I had Lewis Pullman was my bunkmate on the aircraft carriers. We lived there for two weeks. You just never think that's going to be your future at all. Anyway.
So,
I went through a bunch of stuff, didn't I? That was like...
I mean, it was something. But I know you got your pilot's license,
Yeah.
but when they're up there flying, you couldn't get up there. So you had to teach the actors, like, how to kind of work those cameras that you'd put in the planes.
Yeah, so they had a little knee board, which you have as a pilot, and they had their scripts of what they had to do. I had a mock-up, and I had a little light that, you know, told the pilots, because they were also in part of the little buck meeting. And I said, you know, son, you know, I was like 4 o'clock, backlit. We always love backlit. And to the other side, 8 o'clock. And it was a lot of work, actually. I spent a lot of time scouting, 3D mapping the location to know where they were. I had to guess the f-stop of where they go 5 miles away and focus and everything. I had to get that set. And once they took off, I had to kind of hope everything would be okay on the way back, that they got the lines and they got everything. The light was in the right place. And we did a morning run and we did an evening run. We had 2 jets. Each jet had 6 cameras. And then we had, so that's 12. And then we had 2 mountain crews. We had a jet and a helicopter. And then then sometimes we just do a normal scene on the ground while they're up having fun, you know. And then we just did normal scenes on the ground. And then we go watch their footage and analyze them and see what they could do better, if they need to do better, needed to run it again. And then we do the evening run. I mean, I just, you know, for me, my goal always is to get things in camera. So with me, I didn't want to do a blue screen or gimbal or volume or anything like that. I feel it connects with the audience. And I think in the first trailer you really saw it when Tom Cruise leaves the aircraft carrier and you feel the drop and you go, yeah, that's real. And I think you get excited about that. And it's much more excited than I've seen it before on gimbals with screens, because you see people they just float off. They do the back thing, but I don't think they have the back and the drop and everything, just yanking the body to pieces sometimes, that I think you just kind of get. And I think that's what we were after, and I think we got that.
Yeah, you absolutely did. One scene that is so great is when Tom is riding his motorcycle and the plane's taking off and that lighting, that sun, like, talk about capturing that.
Did that 3 times. Yeah. Just because, you know, it's overcast and like there had to be the perfect light, and, you know, I like operating, so it just capturing him with the backlight in the perfect place and the jet actually going through the sun in the right place was all just timing and getting that perfect weather. And we chased it for a couple days and we finally had the perfect one. I mean, that was a little bit of work. Yeah.
And the canyon runs, I mean.
Canyon runs are great. I mean, it's interesting because, you know, also when the Navy does their runs, they're doing it at 5,000 feet. So it was a large time we had convincing him that, you know, 100 feet was much more exciting for the movie, because it's pretty boring up there. It's like you travel, you know, commercial, and you're going 600 miles in the air. it's not that exciting, but if you're 50 feet, it's pretty exciting, you know? So that's kind of the whole thing of Top Gun. There's a desert run, which is the lowest run, or they got a special pilot too that could fly below 100 feet. And he had special permission to go, I think he said 50, but it felt like 25. And just, it blew everything to bits, but it was just, and then you see the plane take off and you see the vortexes go off, you know, and sometimes you think that, sometimes it looked, there's one run that I thought looked CG, but it's not, it's completely real. And I think it has a definite, I think that's the feeling we wanted, you know. There's one scene also that's kind of interesting, is there's the Dark Star scene which takes off, and the production designer had to build the shack to be able to collapse. The thing is that when it got to the end of the runway, it took off, and the set roof flew off, and there's people in there, and you know the lamps fell down, and I mean, it's in the movie. I thought we'd have to fix it later or do another run, but it's in the movie. You see all the guys, the guards inside cowering as the whole thing took off. I mean, kind of great, you know.
The fun things we're learning tonight. Oh my gosh. Claudio, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you in the panel.
All right,
For a bit,
perfect.
stay put, and
Oh,
we're
yeah.
going to bring up a clip from The Whale. Okay, please welcome prosthetics artist for The Whale, Adrian Morat. Oh, I don't know if any of you remember the first time that still of Brendan was released, and everyone was like, that is Brendan, oh my gosh. Your work, it's all due to your work. I mean, what was your process for creating this, Adrian, and transforming Brendan?
Well, it's a long process, obviously. The first thing was Darren gave me a call and told me that we were right at the beginning of the pandemic. So he said, I'm sorry. And Darren always works with the same group of collaborators. Sorry. There we go. And since all the movie shoots have been shut down, he told me, like, well, we have a golden opportunity. Our group is all free right now. Let's do a movie. I want to shoot this movie. It's small. It's a small thing based on a theater play. And I would like to shoot that in 5 weeks. And he sent me the script. And I quickly realized that not only he was talking about the main character being in full face and body prosthetics, that he was the main character of the movie, and that he was basically there in every scene in a small set where he's in a single apartment. So I realized the task on hand, and I begged him not to give us 5 weeks.
And as this was done during the pandemic, you actually didn't have access to Brendan Fraser directly when you were putting together your live cast. So talk about how you managed to get the cast. The body cast.
That was really, that was another thing that was very frightening, because normally the way you do those kind of makeups is that you have the actor coming to the shop and you do either a full body live cast or like a head cast as well, and you work from copies of their body with clay on top of it, and you sculpt the appliances like that, and then you do molds. Since everybody was very worried at the beginning of the pandemic and we didn't have access to Brendan, I was like, how are we going to do this? They didn't want to send Brendan to our shop to do live cast, and in the past 5-6 years we've been experimenting with 3D printing technologies. So, and we did a bunch of tests, in-house tests, that were really successful at doing prosthetics that would be not only very realistic, but that would also blend into the skin in ways that is almost unobtainable with traditional manners of doing prosthetics. But we still had a few things to tweak, and I was very afraid of using it on a real movie until we fixed those things. The whale came around, and since I've worked 5 times with Darren before, I was like, well, if we if we screw up, he might forgive me and maybe hire me again in the future. And so that's how we did it. We did it completely as a digital process, which was, I think, one of the first time being done like that.
Wow. See, technology advances and it's incredible. Okay, talk about applying that makeup to Brennan for the first time, and like how long it took and all the different pieces that went in, because it's, as you said, it's not just his face, it's his body, his legs, and full body.
Yeah, and the first time you do it, like you know, like you work in your shop for, in this case, we had 12 weeks to build it, so about 3 months, and you work in your shop, and basically what you're doing is you're doing prototyping. You don't know if it's going to work, and you go on set and you cross your fingers that, and by the end of the shoot you're like, either it worked, or most of the time you're like, well, I wish I would have done it differently. And until the moment you glue it onto the actor's face and on his body, and the actor starts acting with it, it's just inert pieces of rubber. It's like as much as you're creating all sorts of details, you do like the pores and capillaries, and you punch in every hair like of the beard and on his body. It's just pieces of rubber. So when you glue it on the actor's face, and you have an actor that's as brilliant as Brendan is, and then you see it, you put him in front of the camera, and it just comes to life. It's not only a sigh of relief, you're like, Jesus, whew, but you're also like amazed that what you've created is just like alive all of a sudden. It becomes a character that was written on the page.
What was it like seeing Brendan for the first time in full body makeup?
What was it?
What was it like seeing him for the first time?
Well, like I said, there was a bit of a sigh of relief. You see, like I always see things in a very bit of perfectionist, and that's probably why I get along with Darren. It's tough for me to look at stuff objectively. It's like, oh wow, that was really good. I always look at things like, doesn't work, this doesn't, like, how can I improve upon what I'm seeing? So even the first time, I don't stop at what works. I just look at everything that needs to be fixed until we get him into the camera, in front of the cameras the first time.
How many hours did it take?
First time we did the makeup, it took 7 hours. You know, even if you glue on the pieces, even if pieces were designed, let's say, to go right underneath his eye bags, or like on the side of his temple, it's just the weight of the pieces make it that it's gonna drag down a little bit. So you need to adjust like that, and then you need to adjust the color temperature of the skin tone so that it's in harmony with the color palette that the DOP is choosing on a set. So it took 7 hours for doing all those adjustments, but as we did it day after day after day, we got it down to 2 hours 45. So, yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, stay put. We'll have you back for the panel conversation. And now we are going to have a clip from Everything Everywhere All at Once. Okay, please welcome editor Paul Rogers.
Hello.
Hello. Paul, I don't think anybody's has looked at a fanny pack the same ever since seeing that. I mean, talk about editing that scene. Like,
That was one of the first scenes that I cut, and I think it was important for me to prove to myself that I could do it. So they shot that scene pretty early, and this film is interesting because, you know, it's got that kind of Hong Kong aesthetic, but for these fight scenes where in Hong Kong they would take a week to shoot these films, it was a half day or a full day, just one day to shoot that scene. So that scene I cut and brought it to set, and they showed the crew. And I remember Key, who plays Waymond, couldn't watch it. He was too nervous to see how he had done. And they showed, during the lunch break, they showed that scene, and my heart was pounding, and Michelle was there. And right after the scene stopped playing, Michelle just booked it out of the room, and I was like, oh no, I've messed up. She hated it. And what I realized later is she was booking it to Key's dressing room to tell him, it's incredible, you did a great job. But in the moment, I was like, Michelle Yeoh hates my editing. What am I doing?
But it all worked out in the end.
It all worked out.
I just want to know, what was your reaction when you got the script and when you got the call
I was
from the Daniel?
completely overwhelmed and intimidated, and yeah, I mean, it was beautiful. I had a weird introduction to the script because Dan Kwan and Daniel Shiner are good friends, and they lived a couple blocks from where I lived and where I work in Highland Park in Los Angeles, and so they called me up and said, hey, we have this movie we're writing, and we want to walk through the story with you. They have been doing this with other people, just to kind of give them a way to talk through the script and see what's working and what's not working. And so I sat in Dan Kwan's back office, and they talked through the script, and they acted it out, and did the sound effects, and they had this wall behind them that just had all this crazy stuff, like hot dog fingers and raccoonie, and I was like, this is nonsense. That must be for something else. But this is really cool. And then slowly I started to realize, like, wait a second, these words mean things. And I kept crying. I kept breaking down during the film. It was this really beautiful, or during them acting out the film. And at the end of it, I was like, and there was no discussion of me working on it. It was just like, we want to talk through this with you. And at the end, I was just like, I really want to see this film. I hope you make it. I need a couple of days to recover from this experience. And so then when I got the script, it had swapped from, before it was a father-daughter story, and it was possibly Jackie Chan involved, and so I was kind of picturing Jackie Chan, and then it swapped to a mother-daughter, and they told me that it was Michelle Yeoh was who basically wrote it for, and I was like, I have to be a part of it. I have to work on this film. Michelle Yeoh, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was such an important film for me. And as I was reading it, I was like, I can't, if I think about editing this film, I'll become overwhelmed. I can't do that, so I have to just read it as a fan, read it as someone who wants to see the film being made. And actually, Matthew Hannum, who cut Swiss Army Man, I asked him if he could grab a drink with me before I started on the film, and I just said, please help me. You've worked with these guys before I'd worked with them on a lot of shorter projects. He'd worked with them on a feature. And he gave me some great advice, which was, don't think about the big picture yet. Just take it one moment at a time, one scene at a time, and that's the only way you can get through the first cut. You're gonna watch the full cut after that, and it's gonna be bad. But then you can start breaking it down and figuring out what's not working, what's working.
What's so beautiful about the film is that even though we go through a million multiverses, some for brief seconds, that car park scene at the end is just devastating. It really shows the mother and daughter relationship. Like, how did you maintain that thread throughout whilst going through all the crazy action, the crazy universes, and then ending at that moment?
That was the scene that kept me up at night. In a good way. There were a couple of scenes, but that was one of them. And that scene, we realized through the process of screenings, another piece of advice that Matt Hannum gave me was screen it as often as possible. And this was something that Dan and Daniel had taken from the process of making Swiss Army Man, was every 2 weeks we would screen the film. Once we had a rough cut, every 2 weeks we would screen it, no matter where it was. And it was sometimes really painful because we were in the middle of trying new things. We realized through the process of screening that that last 15 minutes, that last 5 minutes really depended on the first 15 minutes in a lot of ways, on whether we connected with these characters, whether we connected with Evelyn and Joy and Waymond. Everybody seemed to connect with Waymond pretty quick, right? He's incredibly charming and you just root for him. You know, Evelyn and Joy, they're tough, right? And they have a lot of walls up. Waymond doesn't have those walls up. So in a couple of the early screenings, people were really connecting with Waymond's story, and then when it came to the parking lot, they were like, yeah, that was nice that they got to get back together. And so, yeah, really a lot of that parking lot scene, I realized pretty early on that one of both Stephanie Hsu and Michelle Yeoh's superpowers was their ability to listen. So as much as possible, I would try to just focus on them listening to each other. Because also throughout the film and throughout their, in my opinion, throughout their lives, they haven't been actually listening to each other. So that parking lot scene was the first time they're really connecting and hearing each other. So watching them hear each other and listen to each other was more powerful than watching them talk at each other, because that's what they've been doing their whole lives.
Yeah. Amazing. Paul, yes, please give him a round of applause for that. Amazing work. Paul, I'm going to see you back in a few minutes for the panel conversation. Congratulations. Stay put, and we are going to bring up a clip from Avatar: The Way of Water. Please welcome visual effects supervisor Eric Sandin.
I'm so used to seeing this.
I know. Usually Eric and I, when we see one another, it's on a box.
And I'm on the other side of the planet.
And he's here from Australia.
New Zealand. Close.
Close. But thank you so much. Avatar: Way of Water is phenomenal.
Thank you.
And there's a lot of new technology to talk about. Performance capture underwater at Water FX. Talk about how you managed that.
Well, I mean, it was all just such a big challenge, right? Like the big problem with cameras in general when you're shooting water is you get a lot of reflections. And when you're trying to capture with 70 cameras, you get a lot more reflections. So we had 70 cameras above the water, 70 cameras below the water. But the problem is, and they were all sort of linked together so we could get our performance, but you always get these weird reflections. Like if you go underwater and look up, you see it's like a mirror. So we went old school and we actually covered the water with ping pong balls to just break up the surface and allow us to shoot both above and below at the same time. So it's a really cheap solution for a big problem.
Interesting. I love that about the ping pong balls. Let's talk about James Cameron and working with him and what he said that he wanted this film to be from the first Avatar, how different he wanted it to be.
I mean, when we started talking about this the first time and reading the script, he really wanted this to be a family piece, right? He wanted it to be about the future. Jake and Neytiri, they're 10 years older. They have a family, they've grown kids, they've got all these bonds. So he really wanted it to be less about them and more about the family and the interaction between the mom, the dad, and all the kids, and just the family bonds. So that was his big goal for this movie, and obviously to see more of Pandora. I mean, we saw the jungles, we saw the sky, we saw a little bit in the first movie. And this movie, he wanted to explore somewhere completely different. And next movie, we'll go somewhere completely different again.
We're not allowed to ask a spoiler, so we'll just have to wait and see. But I mean, with the water capture, you had tanks like that, so that wasn't done on green screen. The actors were actually in the water.
Yeah, because I mean, when you get actors on a capture stage, right? A lot of times they'll act like they're on a stage. They will overact, and they will, when you ask them to swim, they will be sort of like this, and it never looks good. So Jim really wanted to make sure we got in the water, and we actually captured everybody holding their breath, and being in the water, and actually moving and doing all the scenes in the water properly. I mean, Kate was able to hold her breath for 8 minutes underwater to do a scene, which is outstanding. I can do about 1.5 minutes, and that'll be it's my limit. And yeah, she was able to act all the way through and be underwater for 8 minutes, which was amazing to watch.
And as you know, I love the Tulkun and the eyes. Like, there's so much. I've never like cried. If you've seen this film, if you saw it in 3D, like you were probably crying when the Tulkun says it's too painful. Like, I mean, talk about the influence for that and designing.
Well, it's hard, right? When you have a big wall with an eye and an eyebrow, and you have to get emotion out of it. You can never get two eyes, so you're dealing with one eye and trying to get emotion out of this character. So it takes a lot of work to get emotion out of an eyeball and a brow, and I think it really the way Jim shot his cameras and the way that he was able to interact with the other characters. I think Payakan was one of the most loved characters in the whole movie. And he really is just an eyeball and a big wall of a whale.
These soulful eyes. But what was the biggest challenge? Like, what sequence was the one that took a lot of work, a lot of hours?
Well, as a visual effects person, I have to say the water, right? But because technically that's a very hard process and hard to do. But it wasn't really. It was the characters. It was there's a great scene in the end of the movie. There's probably 1 or 2 people that haven't seen the movie, so we won't give any spoilers. But at the end of the movie, it's all the characters out on the rock, and there's just this great emotional moment that we get from Zoe, and she's very over the top and very emotional, and Sam is very stoic, and he's another great performance, but it's more inside. And the kids are great all the way through. And it's just they gave this great performance on stage, and you see that, and you understand we have to get that back through the CG characters and make you not feel like you're watching crappy CG characters, and feel for them, right? And I think that's the big thing for me. Is the first time I saw it in the theater with a real audience. Not that Jim and those guys aren't real, but and you see audience members crying, and you see them laughing, and you see them jump out of their seat at the right time, which it just makes you feel like, okay, we must have done something right, because we're getting the right emotion out of people.
Amazing. Eric, thank you so much for your insight into Avatar: Way of Water. Let's bring out all the panelists again for our panel conversation. Oh, the mics are working now. How incredible is this evening? And hearing from this incredible group of artisans. All right, I'm gonna work down the line, and I'm gonna ask you, like, what is the biggest misconception people have about your work and your craft? Eric? Let's go down the line.
Let's see, the biggest misconception. That all we have, well, actually I've done a few interviews that people thought we painted our actors blue, and that's how we got our Na'vi. So that was one of the misconceptions we got. But the biggest is probably amount of hours we have to spend doing this craft, which is, it's a few. And but if you didn't enjoy it, you wouldn't do it, so.
For me, it's that we all sit in, well, I'm an editor, in case, but it's that we all sit in a dark room, we work on our own, alone, by ourselves, with the curtains drawn. But for me, it's a very social process of interacting with the director, and even interacting with the footage and the actors feels very social and emotional. So that's it for me.
Biggest misconception is that we mold the actors with straws up their nose. Even actors that did come to the shop a few years before and had their live cast done, when they come back, like, oh, we're going to do the same thing as last time. We're going to put straws up our noses. And they're like, we didn't do that last time.
Biggest misconception. That it's not all about me, I guess, would be the other one. I guess so they think what a cameraman is like, but I'm not that at all. So I guess that would be the biggest misconception.
The biggest misconception would be that it all exists, that we didn't do anything, and that's probably the best thing that could possibly happen, is if, the audience is watching. But a lot of times they get sets, like, what does that mean? Oh, the architecture, the interior design, but it's also so much more than that, of building the character and getting the detail of working with all of our collaborators too here tonight. So just that, going into like what that art is of design, I think.
That you use the real thing in clothes, that people would say, so what was it like using Elvis's real clothes? And I go, Graceland wouldn't like that. They're historical artifacts. And I think sometimes people think that there's a big shop where there's like a section and it says Elvis, or it says Gatsby, or it says Moulin Rouge, and unfortunately there isn't, and I've looked. I'd love there to be a big shop. It'd make everything a lot easier. Especially when you arrive on set and you realise, the actress just cannot wear her shoes. As much as we all love them, she's just not going to be able to play the scene. And you think, where is that shoe shop? And you have to go to the local drugstore and just buy some slip-on jiffies. And you just hope no one's ever going to notice them.
For music, I think the biggest misconception is that we don't write the music specifically for exactly what's happening on camera, like in the edit, like that somehow we just write music and they use it or something, or I don't know. Like, the biggest question I get is, so did you get to see the movie before it came out then? It's like, yes.
Well, maybe just coming back to our tanks, I think the misconception is that toys are only made to enjoy kids. Actually, the adults are having much more fun with it sometimes.
With the relevance to the award season happening around, all the nominees, all the runner-ups could be the best. All of them are the best. So the biggest misconception is the only one who takes the award is the best.
Oh.
Thank you.
All right. Emma, I'm going to start with you and then work back down for this last question. Of all the films, you all have an incredible body of work here. And I would love for you later to go check out their IMDb's and check out their films. What is the most underrated film that you wish audiences would go out and watch? MM? Is there a film that you worked on?
I beg your pardon?
Is there a film that you want audiences to go out and watch, aside from RRR, because everybody's seen that 5 times, 20 times, a film that you've worked on?
Can I get the question?
It has to be a film that we've been a part of.
Well, yeah, or like for you, an album that you want people to listen to.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so something that you have done, maybe that hasn't seen the light of an award season, but that you would like people to see or hear.
From the other movies?
Yes, from the other movies. So like a movie that you've done that you thought was really great, but for some reason no one came to see it. And you'd like them to. Or a piece of music you'd like them to listen to.
What's the next one people should go and watch that you've worked on?
Yeah, as an enthusiast and as a technician in this competitive world, I would like to watch all the movies happening around, globally. So in that process, I sometimes get lost as an audience, and I really get carried away, and I lose the spirit of being being competitive. So that's where the dilemma of either to be competitive or to get lost in the work of others that happens often to me. So I recommend to enjoy the great art happening around the world, and so do whatever your heart is going to say to do. That's the best thing to do.
That's a great answer.
Great answer.
Marcus, which of your films?
It's really a tough question, I think. There's a movie we worked on 2 years ago. It's called The Stranger, and it's a very slow movie, and I think because of that, sometimes people don't think, especially distributors wouldn't think like maybe a lot of people like to watch it, but I think the film is really worth watching because to be brave to take so much time, I think it's really a style that I enjoy, and I think this film just deserves to be seen.
And Ryan, what album should
Yeah, so this is our first movie as a band. While we made this score, we also made 3 albums. Tomorrow's 1, 2, and 3. So especially if you're a fan of the movie, I think it would be cool to check out these albums because there is some interconnection between them, some multiversal connections. So I guess I would say, yeah, go hunting for Tomorrow's 1, 2, and 3.
All right. Catherine?
I would say the movie Australia. I'm very proud of my work on that film, and I'm very proud of the collective work on it. And I think it really speaks to so many universal issues. So, yeah, I'd wish people would go out and see that movie.
All right. Florencia?
This year, another film I designed came out, Blonde, and that's Andrew Dominik's film about Marilyn Monroe, and he really wanted to create a tapestry of real images of her life to have the audience really connect visually with Marilyn and then tell like a poetic, surreal story of the emotions of her life. And I think it's a really beautiful depiction of the struggle and the emotions that he was trying to depict of hers. So I think that would be a wonderful film for more people to discover.
That's streaming on Netflix. And Claudio?
It might be my first film I shot, which I think is the curious case of Benjamin Buttons, which I kind of, I was scared beyond all belief on that movie because it was a 150-day shooting schedule. It was, we promised we were going to do it in short hours, which didn't happen. And I was a little bit of a mess after, but it was my first movie, and I was just, and the production designer, Don Burt, who I love, and he was, which really kind of showed me that it really is collaborative without those sets that I had to light and without the talent that, and the makeup and everything that went with it. And the set design was phenomenal. So sometimes those sets were really easy for me to light because it was just, they almost lit themselves. So for me, that's an emotional movie because it's my first one.
I have worked on over 150 movies. That's crazy. Wait. I have also, like, every few years, Rotten Tomatoes does a list of the 50 worst movies of all time. I have 2 in the top 5. It's not one of those 2. I would have to say The Whale. Because it's a perfect storm with a great actor, great director, great cast, great script, and everything came together just to make my work shine. So I would have to say that movie.
This is my second film, so I can just say, I guess, the other one. But I also, it feels a little weird to say that, but I do think there's some really incredible films that have been formative to me. I think the works of Galo Joseph, the works of Arthur Jafa, Ho Xiaoxin, who did an incredible film called 3 Times. There's just so many incredible filmmakers out there that I think everyone should just go explore, go, subscribe to the Criterion channel and just watch everything.
And Eric?
I would say Lord of the Rings because I left Santa Barbara because I started here, left Santa Barbara and went to work on Lord of the Rings for 6 months, and it's 23 years later. But I guess everyone's seen that, so I would say Green Knight, actually, which is a fun, I've worked with David Lowery a bunch of times, and he's an amazing director and editor and really fun. It's not a movie for everybody, but I loved it. It's beautiful, and it's a great movie.
Incredible. Well, I would like to congratulate the Variety Artisans Awards recipients, class of 2023. And now, yes, we have the awards presentation, and here to present the awards are Sandy and David Wasco.
Thank you. This is such a favorite night for us, I think for all of us here. Thank you, Jazz and Variety, for giving us the opportunity to hear from these extraordinary filmmakers. And Artisans, we can't thank you enough for sharing what makes great films. It takes each of you together. Each of your creative skills, honed, as we've heard tonight, by hard efforts, challenging projects, ever-changing technologies, perhaps a mentor or a bit of luck, but always with joy in your commitments and deep collaborations. From our cinema seats or sofas, you've propelled us into future and back in time, given us the vertigo of flight, caused solidarity with characters fighting against enormous odds, and rolled us out of those same seats with laughter. As filmgoers, knowing how you've done this, knowing how films are put together, has little to do with our initial enjoyment, but the enthusiast in us is always delighted by a glimpse behind the curtain at the contributions that make movie magic, your contributions and your magic.
Thank you all. Yes, you've made words on a page come alive for us. We're honored to represent the Santa Barbara International Film Festival by recognizing you with this year's Variety Artisans Awards. Congratulations for your work this year, and we look forward to all you do in the years ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you to the Santa Barbara International Film Festival and to Roger.